Democracy is coming to the USA.
Today is the 77th week of the MoveOn in Chief, and if any of you outside of our group are paying attention, you've been witnessing the biggest sellout of our nation, pioneered by Russia. No secret being concealed that as 45 ignored the calls to keep the meeting between the two from being private, with only translators in the room. I would love to have been the fly on the wall during that meeting between the two. Today we will explore the idea that Trump could actually be a KGB officer in secret. So I mean, the thing about it is why would you keep a meeting between the two of you secret? Why would you only allow your translator, in the room?
PP.
Oh yes, the PP tapes. It's funny because Putin actually laughed about that particular issue when they talked about the Dozier or the dossier. I mean, oops. So he acted like he had no clue, but yet he laughed about it. So he saw the PP tapes. It's absolutely incredible what is happening. Anyway, reminder, this meeting was in Helsinki, Finland. It took place only 3 days after 12 agents under direct Kremlin control were indicted for meddling in the 2016 election. Trump said, we got questions in this witch hunt, and I don't think people buy it. He's just calling it a witch hunt. So he also said, I think the United States has been foolish and we are all to blame. The probe is a disaster for our country. There was no collusion at all, and everybody knows it. Total witch hunt.
Well, one of the things that obviously puts the lie to that was that during the joint press conference between Trump and Putin made reference to the 2016 meeting at Trump Tower with Junior and Javanka and all of those people, senior people from Trump's campaign. So Putin's admitting the meeting took place and he knew about it.
I believe that Colbert put it best when he said that he was absolutely floored. I mean, it's just, he said that, and he also used an awesome Lincoln quote, and it says, America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we are destroyed ourselves. A house divided against itself cannot stand. Those are two separate quotes from Abraham Lincoln that Colbert used the other day to sort of describe this absolute disaster that we're facing. Even a Fox News commentator cried, saying that his relationship with is absolutely disgusting. He was actually in tears, by the way. A Fox News commentator. And I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but 32 Republicans, mind you, denounced this summit. It's just very interesting that these Republicans, who are absolutely spineless, actually finally stood up and said, okay, this is enough. And what are they going to do about it? What do you guys think that they will actually do? Probably nothing. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. So almost everyone said that this was the most disgraceful performance ever seen by the American president. The worst we could hear from an American president. And what about all of the voices that said there was no collusion? Where's the proof? The proof was in the summit, and Putin even hinted that he had officials rig the election. So now the Republicans that were in denial mode. And by the way, again, Colbert said that the summit, he was shaking him to his core. And I couldn't agree any more with that. Would you guys like to add anything to the summit?
Well, I have heard a number of people, Republicans and Democrats, come out against this. One that particularly amused me was former Governor Schwarzenegger comparing Trump to a little wet noodle. But the one that I really got tickled about, and I wrote it down because it's so good and I wanted to get it right, Congressman Adam Schiff, admittedly a Democrat, I was amazed I couldn't see Putin's lips moving while our president spoke.
What I didn't realize, and by the way, I've validated my language with a young, more hip person than I am, but what I didn't realize was that Helsinki was an audition to become Putin's bitch. And it appears that Trump performed admirably. But that also brings up the question of looking at how fawning people still are towards Trump. Look at Hannity, look at Tucker Carlson, looking at the somewhat wishy-washy comments from so many of the Republicans who really aren't willing to call him out directly. How do you do the hierarchy here? Because you've got Putin's bitch, and then you've got many of the GOP and the right-wing pundits who seem to be auditioning for the next level down. And I'm wondering, is it bitches all the way down, just like the turtles?
Very possibly. Just before I got here, just before I left my office to come here, I caught a headline that had just come up saying that Trump had come out and said he misspoke and that he had no problem understanding how Russia might have interfered. So, lying again, but apparently he's feeling a little bit of pressure from some of those Republicans who've spoken out. But, when was he lying? Every time his lips were moving?
The funny point with that is, Rand Paul kind of threw me off yesterday. He actually, of all the Republicans that actually denounced this summit of lunacy, Rand Paul actually, he said that why not? Why don't we have good relations with Russia? I think it's a good thing that Putin and Trump are getting along. And it's like, well, you know what? Relations with Russia would be good if it wasn't completely dirty and if it wasn't completely controlled by the oligarchy, and it also if Russia was improving their own relations with their own people and also with the Ukraine and all those other countries that they are trying to invade. The problem is with Russia and being in the bed with Russia is that they're a complete dictatorship. Putin has been in power for 18 years. It's a total sham, this whole scenario. And by the way, Putin showed up 40 minutes late, and Trump failed to call him out on that. He failed to say anything negative about Putin whatsoever, and now he's in damage control, and he's trying to pull back the pieces that just fell apart while he was on stage with Putin, in his love fest. I was just waiting for him to just ride on Putin's back.
And now a lot of the Republicans are saying, well, we spy too. They're making us equivalent to the Russians in this, which is also disgusting.
Oh, gee, Russia does it, so it's okay for us to do it too? Thanks.
So I'm curious, getting back to your comment about when is he lying, and I'm wondering if this is not opening up a whole new realm of this intersection of political theory and philosophy and psychology, because the concept of a lie implies somewhere that there's a concept of any sort of objective truth. And it's not clear to me that this administration has any such concepts. That It is, what are the words that get me what I want right now? And that's all that matters. And there is no recognition that there is a reality that we are living in, and that when things are real, they are real. They will get you if you don't acknowledge they are real. It's like driving your car very fast at the edge of a cliff or at a brick wall. Those are real and they will get you. That is an objective truth. There are other things in this world that fit that. So how do you frame the folks who don't have any concept of that?
I think Kellyanne Conway put it best when they were talking about, Trump's crowd size the very first day of his presidency. And basically, they referred to it as alternative facts. They are unfortunately still living in alternative fact world, and they don't know the truth from reality, unfortunately. They are just living in a reality of delusions and collusion. And I think that, it's pretty clear that, there was collusion with Trump and Putin. And on top of everything else, to top everything off, prior to this summit, you have Trump going to meet with our allies and just completely taking a shit on our allies. Absolutely garbage. It's absolutely absurd. Calling out Germany with using fake alternative facts, referring to the fact that they get, I think he said 70% of their oil from Russia, when Russia, I think only supplies 9% of Germany's oil. It's just one lie train after the next. So, would anybody like to add to the lie?
Well, not about the lie train, but I heard that 250,000 people came out in London to protest Trump. He probably said it was a cheerleading group. I don't think he acknowledged that there are a lot of people that are against his policies.
Well, he did say there were a lot of protesters on both sides. It is interesting. There was a poll that came out on how Trump is viewed in the UK. And surprisingly, his unfavorability in the UK is 77%, which is over 20% less favorable than it is here. So maybe distance lets you be a little bit more objective about what you're looking at. I did want to shift topics slightly, just to say that the numbers for June are in, and it's about 3/4 of a degree centigrade higher, making it the third highest, tied for third highest temperature June on record in modern record keeping. And the previous one was in the midst of an El Nino event, which always drives up temperatures. This one is not. So what we're seeing is very hot May, very hot June. We are seeing all of the predictions out of the climate change world coming to pass. And at the same time, we are seeing that government investment, government support worldwide, and certainly here, for renewable energy is dropping. And in fact, in 2017, fossil fuel consumption increased as opposed to decreasing as a percentage of the total energy. So while we have the distraction of the Helsinki statements and the distractions of the absurdities when meeting with our European allies, we're not getting coverage of issues that are going to, things we are doing today that will have a 1,000-year impact. And when we're talking about climate change at this point, anything we're doing now has a 1,000-year impact. Think about that. The U.S. has been around for, thank you, 242 years. It's a long time, and we are putting in place, we're driving irreversible changes that we don't understand. And how do we get away from focusing on these sideline distractions and get back to substantive issues that we really need to be paying attention to? The glider trucks issue. I just saw the statistic that the EPA had come up with, that these trucks, what is it, every 10,000 of those trucks will be responsible for about 1,600 deaths plus additional cases of asthma, bronchitis, emphysema. That's not getting coverage in the news. We've got this I like it now. We've had omnibus spending bills. Now they're coming up with the minibus spending bill that is doing dramatic cuts to environmental and health and safety regulations and enforcement. And yet those things are saving lives today and next week and protecting the health of our children now and going forward, and protecting the lives of children's parents from various workplace hazards. And we're not getting coverage of that. And we're not chasing that the way that needs to be chased, because we are off on the shiny object chase of Putin's bitch. And I can't resist it, I'm sorry. But clearly this is something we need really to start focusing in on as we talk to our legislators about. We're losing track as a community of real issues, and that's a problem.
One thing that gives me some hope is that some of the organizations aren't losing track. The Earth Justice Group has sued Trump 102 times since he's taken office. And I know that ACLU, Southern Poverty Center, at least those groups are taking some actions.
And those lawsuits are great, and they're important, and there's only one problem. Guess where they go on appeal? And so we need to stop relying on lawsuits and start relying on legislative acts to tighten things up. And we need to be pressing for that, because again, if we're distracted by the Supreme Court nominee and aren't pushing for legislation, at least drafted and ready to go when there are enough votes to get it through, things are not going to get better anytime soon.
Well, I wanted to point out a little bright spot in all of that gloom. The numbers for 2016 came out from the California Environmental Protection Agency, and in 2016 we hit the goal of 1990 emissions levels, which was set for 2020. We're 4 years ahead. So we can do this, and it doesn't hurt the economy. California is what, the fourth or fifth largest economy in the world? We can go green and make money.
Something else that is awesome is that aquatic life is coming back to the Bay Area because of our protections of the environment, and we're a shining example of how we take care of our environment. And we should set a precedent, and we should put the stats and the information out there and make them major media headlines, because we're kind of an example of a good preservation of our ecology, and we could bring things back. It may take time. We won't fully repair it. We're not going to get some of the bees off the endangered list or the monarch butterfly. I don't think that the monarch butterfly will ever fully recover, but we definitely could make progress if we set a precedent in terms of the stats and the information. If we're able to get them out to national television channels, then we could actually, set the tone for, climate change.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you're saying, that Trump is one giant shiny distraction after another while they dismantle our government and environmental protections, and especially while his buddies suck every last drop of oil out of the ground that they can find, and reverse the transition to renewable energy, temporarily at least, just enough to make every last billion they can make. But there is more good news on the front. You guys chipped in. A lot of people from the Bay Area chipped in to send me to Washington, D.C. We picked up 3 co-sponsors in the first week of our lobby day in Washington, D.C. for House Joint Resolution 48, the We the People Amendment, to say that a corporation's not a person and money's not speech, and then start really doing real campaign finance reform, real publicly sponsored financed elections, get the money out of politics, and basically take all their unjust power away and take our Constitution back. And now just last week we picked up a 4th co-sponsor. So if we can get about 1 a week and keep this thing moving, and especially if this sort of becomes the cornerstone of all the people's movements, social justice, environmental justice, we can shift the power balance back, and it would be huge. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes and underneath the shiny, news of the day with Trump. And the resistance is continuing to get stronger and stronger and organized. And I really like what you say about the Bay Area. We're we're the center of the resistance, really. And we did vote ourselves extra taxes to take care of the Bay, and the Bay is recovering. The Bay's been getting better for years. Really for the last 30 years it's been getting better. The only thing is there's still a fight for water, and corporations still control, the water, and the Bay needs more fresh water coming in. So that's another battle, the fight for the water of the Delta. And then the real fight to stop oil in California. California makes a lot of money from oil, so there's a lot going on with that too. But we're going to have Senate staff come down in just a few minutes, so let's get ready for him. He already just sent us a message that he'll be here at 12:30, and I think it's almost 12:30.
Anyway, as far as the Helsinki thing goes, I don't know why is everybody so surprised. I seen that coming a mile away, And then anyway, as far as the shiny thing, all this stuff about the environment, all that's important. However, what's more important really is to stay focused on Trump. He needs to go, with this thing with Kavanaugh, and everybody's crying about Roe versus Wade. Yeah, that's important. However, what I feel is more important is his nomination is an obvious attempted obstruction of justice, and that Kavanaugh is on record saying that a sitting president shouldn't be indicted or investigated. And I mean, it's gotten pretty, as far as I'm concerned, ever since he's encouraged the Russian hacks of emails from Hillary Clinton, he's been colluding with Putin. Now as of Friday with the timeline and everything, hacks of emails, he says it, and then boom, what happens? It happens. Ray Charles could see this shit. He's setting himself up for a fucking power grab, and he wants to establish the Trump dynasty. It's as plain as fucking day. I know, and I don't understand why people aren't talking more about that, because it is the real danger. All this other stuff is, sure, but like you talk about what courts he's going to go to. He's packing the courts with federal judges. It's all going according to plan. He goes, he alienates our allies. He praises dictators. All he's doing when he talks with Kim Jong-un and Putin is he's getting his marching orders. He's getting advice on how to keep power once seized. And it's just unbelievable, and it's sad watching these supposed patriots cheer his fucking clown on when he floats the idea of ending term limits. Do they realize what the fuck they're cheering for? The wealth of ignorance in this country is absolutely astounding, and it's sad, and I really don't know if we're gonna fucking, it might come to arms, really. It just very well might. And hopefully hopefully, you know, this is a nation of laws and all that stuff, and then hopefully it comes through. I'm not exactly a big fan of law enforcement. I don't have that much trust in the judicial system, you know, or anything like that. But however, you know, I gotta think that the FBI is doing its fucking job for a change. You know, and if it isn't, we're all truly fucked, and that's just, you know, it's plain and simple. Who cares about the environment and all that stuff when we're fucking goose-stepping our way to fucking concentration camps and shit, and all that, because that's all that shit at the border. That's just fucking testing grounds to see how far he can go. And he's going pretty fucking far, you know, because he's got I mean, it might be only a third or whatever it is, you know, but people, oh, I got my $40 a week tax break or whatever. Oh, yeah, make America great again. You fucking morons. What do you think's going to happen when your fucking tax break ain't there no more, but it's still there for the rich bastards? And your Social Security's gone, and your Medicare's gone, and all that stuff's gone. And all of a sudden, you know, you realize you fucked up, you know, and you're going to be too late. Too little and too late. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. You're awesome. So does anybody have any questions for Tom? And thank you for coming down here today. We really appreciate you.
The California numbers on carbon dioxide emissions came out for 2016, and we met our 2020 goal of getting back to the 1990 emissions levels, 4 years ahead of the goal. And I'm just wondering if Senator Feinstein has anything in her back pocket that might push the federal government in the same direction. Because it's not going to hurt the economy. California has an amazing economy, even with all of our environmental activities.
I haven't had a chance to look at the numbers, but I will. I'll go ahead and look at that. But I mean, she's 100% in line with you as far as renewables go, and as far as fuel efficiency standards and targets for carbon emission. I think I've mentioned to you guys before, but the bill that she worked on with Olympia Snowe when she was in the Senate set, I think it was 15 or 20 years down the line of fuel efficiency standards. So definitely on her mind as far as what can happen at the federal level. Legislation-wise, it's no mystery to you that it's not the most friendly climate, but at the same time, she sent letters 2 months ago, I think, to the automakers about adhering to those fuel efficiency standards that they set a long time ago. So kind of leveraging both the relationships in the private sector to do their part in making sure that emissions are down.
Just have a really quick question. So I don't know if you heard about this, but there is actually a push to make Puerto Rico the 51st state. As you know, Puerto Rico is suffering through this terrible hurricane, and lots of their infrastructure is destroyed. People are sick. The death toll is really unknown, and people are still without their power. And I believe that if Feinstein could, take advantage of this particular moment in terms of the push to get, Puerto Rico to become the 51st state, they may actually be able to get the help that they absolutely need. So what are your thoughts on that?
To my knowledge, she hasn't made a statement on statehood. If there's a bill that's moving through, or that's even been introduced yet, no. I don't know. I haven't heard anything on it. I can ask DC staff, but I don't know if they have.
So, but talking about Puerto Rico actually segues somewhat into this. So I'm participating, as you know, with People Demanding Action, which is a Progressive Democrats of America offshoot. So here's our monthly letter, really acknowledging the senator's leadership with respect to the problems with the way Trump was treating, the administration was treating refugees at the border and families at the border, and pointing out we actually need to ask her to do even more. So there are a couple of additional asks in the letter that I won't get into in detail. But one of them in particular is the fact that, there's a court order that families are to be reunited. And it doesn't seem that that's happening in a timely manner. For some reason, HHS and DHS, for some reason, didn't seem to have the systems in place to understand what they were doing and how the program manages out over time. And that's relevant because when you look at Puerto Rico, there was that FEMA report that said, oops, we screwed up. We didn't know what we were doing. What I have not heard, and I would love to hear from the senator, is a call from Congress to the GAO to audit what's going on within DHS in terms of their preparedness and their competence in various areas. Their competence in getting emergency supplies in. We've got the U.S. military, which is one of the most competent logistics organizations in the world. We have FEMA, which seems to have demonstrated it is the most incompetent logistics organization in the world. Perhaps GAO can get a look at things and suggest some solutions or identify some gaps where DHS, FEMA could work with the military to leverage their capabilities in emergencies. And this, by the way, is a really important thing to us as Californians, which is why I'm asking the senator to take a look at this. We have wildfires that are hitting urban areas. We have had floods in the past. We now have areas that are seriously at risk of flooding and earth slides. That displaces people, that displaces families. Gee, doesn't that sound like a familiar situation where people need to find each other and can't, and people need emergency supplies and can't? And then, of course, we've got an earthquake coming. And the earthquake is going to displace lots of people, and people are going to be separated and will need emergency supplies. This is all in her state. And asking to do an analysis of what went wrong and how can we fix it is very, very important. So I would love to get a response back at one of these meetings on what will happen to dig in deeper into these debacles that we have seen play out time and time again.
Yeah. Just a couple of pieces. I mean, the senator has said before of how the executive or how the decisions have impacted the agencies as far as what their ability to adapt to the changing policy of the administration. So as far as their competency or ability to do so, it's not like they were given much notice either. I hear what you're saying, though, as far as an oversight agency actually digging in to see if they're competent about it, but I'm just saying from the initial reactions of it, it wasn't too surprising. On the bit about wildfires in the state, we as state staff, we essentially are monitoring every single fire going on in the state, every active one through CAL FIRE and through all the other local jurisdictions that are dealing with them. So as far as fire prevention, mitigation, fuel eradication, all those kinds of things are things that our office is involved in. I do know that 2 weeks ago, I believe it was announced that there was about $1 to $3 million in flood protection projects that were announced for the state of California that got federal funds for not rebuilding our seawall, not doing any of those things, but just that those are some projects that are going on too.
And again, I very much appreciate the looking ahead and thinking about the problems and what do we need to do to mitigate them. But that doesn't change the fact that our ability to mitigate disasters is a lot less robust than nature's ability to trample over any of our mitigation plans. And therefore, having a competent emergency response program that involves such things as getting in supplies, tracing people, figuring out how to link up separated people is critical. And I don't see that. And, you know, FEMA understood the issue of this following Katrina. And nothing's being done about it, apparently, because they certainly aren't managing it. DHS, which is where FEMA lives, certainly isn't managing it. So it's a problem. And frankly, I am astonished that HHS is taking the brunt of putting families back together when that's really not, you know, HHS really is not designed to, as near as I can tell, to deal with major flows of people in an emergency. I thought that was what FEMA was supposed to do. I thought that was a DHS mandate. So it needs looking at.
Well, one way that a legislative way of dealing with the separation of families is to repeal two laws that date back to the Immigration Act of 1929, Title 8 U.S. Codes 1325 and 1326. These are the laws that criminalize crossing the U.S. border without authorization. If they could get rid of those, then the family separation would not be the issue that it is, and they could stop wasting dollars on deporting people. I have another small bit. I'm asking Senator Feinstein to oppose the confirmation of judicial nominees who support discrimination against LGBTQ citizens and other underrepresented groups. And these people are Senator Mark Norris, Howard Nielsen, Ryan Bounds, Andrew Oldham, and Gordon Giampietro. And if you can read this, you can have it.
So as you know, everybody here has chipped in and sent me to Washington, D.C. about 3.5 weeks ago. And from that lobby day that we did, we picked up 3 new co-sponsors for House Joint Resolution 48. And then yesterday we picked up a 4th one this month. So not too bad, we're at 60. And we do need Senator Feinstein to introduce the Senate version of the We the People Amendment to the Constitution that states that a corporation is not a person, money is not speech, so we can get the big money out of politics, and so that corporations don't have rights that they were never supposed to have, that were reserved just for we the people. And we have to do that in less than 8 years. We're 2 years into a 10-year plan, and we're ahead of schedule on every point except getting it introduced in the Senate. So to have 8 years to build this and make the amendment happen, we need Dianne Feinstein to introduce it in the Senate right now. It would be the crowning achievement of her career.
Thanks, Larry.
So this is something that I read the other day, and I'm not sure how valid this is, but from what I heard, the children that are being separated from their parents, apparently their families are being charged over $800 for their DNA tests, and 23andMe came out and said prior to this that this would be free. So why are these families being charged $800? Can your staff look into that and see what you can come up with in terms of these families being charged $800? I mean, yeah, for a $2 DNA test, I mean, it's just absurd, you know?
So on changing topics, I appreciate the chance to drift from here to there in these discussions or these questioning sessions. There is. So one of the things that came out with the indictment, Mueller's indictment of the Russians, was a lot of discussion about what a threat we're facing to the elections. And it comes into a lot of places. But one of the areas is having a nice auditable voting record. Do the electronic tallies actually match with what people think they actually voted for? Because electronics can, in principle, get hacked. San Francisco has been working on this open source paper ballot system. And if you're a good conservative, you should love that, because it provides for a much lower cost of government with open source software and off-the-shelf hardware. You've got something that is going to intrinsically be more secure, because people can really look at the system and look for vulnerabilities. That's harder to do with the proprietary systems, but you find such stupidities as the PC Anywhere being built into a number of the voting database systems that were sold up through 2007. That story just broke today. open source on off-the-shelf hardware is a much cheaper system. With a paper ballot, you've got really good traceability. The problem is that this needs to be developed. They've gone a long way on it, but it's been a big discussion on the San Francisco budget this year. And they got some money, but not enough. This needs to be developed. And you know, one of the wonderful things about our market-driven capitalist society is if you can't expect 10 to 20% return on your investment, you don't put in any money. So no one's really putting in any money to this other than, at the moment, city government. It would be really nice to see, again, following up on things conservatives should love, using the cities and the states as laboratories for good government, having funding grants for communities to really explore implementing these systems. It's not a lot of money in the big scheme of things, and it could go a long way to making better voting systems, cheaper voting systems, more secure and more trusted voting systems, which is, after all, what everyone wants, given this terror about voter fraud that we see out there. So it would be, I'm asking the senator to please consider partnering with some other senators to introduce legislation to provide that sort of funding for the development of these systems. Once they're developed, they roll out at very low cost to anyone that wants them.
So this has been buried in the continuous, never-ending news cycle that seems to be, infinite. This was dated back to May 15th, 2018, and you may be familiar with this. White House eliminated cybersecurity coordinator role. Were you familiar with that? So apparently the White House eliminated the position of the cybersecurity coordinator on the National Security Council on Tuesday, which was back in May, doing away with the post central to developing policy to defend us against increasingly sophisticated digital attacks and the use of offensive cyber weapons. So, I think that they're just basically saying, hey, these cybersecurity issues, it's not really an issue. We're going to just rig your elections, no big deal. I'm sure that that's Donald Trump's answer to the issue. He doesn't want to see the Democrats take over, and I'm worried that we're going to be hit by a cyber attack on election day, and things will swing in the wrong direction, not based on true votes, but based on hacked votes.
The senator would agree with you as far as election integrity is concerned. As to that particular staffing position and what they're responsible with, I don't want to ensue panic. I don't know what that particular role for the entire apparatus means, as opposed to an advisor who advises the president on that policy, but I can dig around to see what sort of action Congress has taken. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get any information on what the agency, whether CIA or DHS, has done with regards to election integrity, but I can poke around and try and get as much info.
I can read to you what Mark Warner had to say, which is a Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee. He said, "I don't see how getting rid of the top cyber official in the White House does anything to make our country safer from cyber threats." He wrote on Twitter, and basically, I think it was John Bolton said the post was no longer considered necessary because lower-level officials had already made cybersecurity issues a core function of the president's national security team, which I don't believe that. I believe that's an absolute lie, like everything else that they put out there. Nothing that they say is real. It's alternative facts. So.
Well, if we were so concerned about Hillary's email, shouldn't we be staffing up, eliminating positions? Just a thought.
I think this summit was a critical time, post-summit, I should say, for all of us to come together, regardless of whether we're Democrats or Republicans or independent or social democrats. We all need to come together and really unify and get this guy out of here. There were apparently 32 senators on the Republican side that denounced this summit. So while we have the momentum going, I believe that we really need to push efforts to impeach. I believe that now, more so than any other time in this lunatic's 77-week run as president, he needs to go. And I think that I think all of us would agree with that. And I think Dianne Feinstein needs to take the lead. She needs to be able to approach everyone on both sides of the aisle. I know she's a moderate, and I know she reaches out to both sides, and she really needs to hone in on this anger, because what we saw was anti-American, was anti-patriotic, was anti-Democrat and anti-Republican. It was anti-everything that our nation stands for. And it was treasonous, yes, absolutely. And I believe also that Trump is actually a secret agent for the KBG. I mean, it just seems that, it's pretty obvious from the way that he acted the other day.
So she had a statement yesterday with regards to the summit. I direct you to the website. It's for someone who doesn't use or is more judicious in using punchy language. I would read her press release on it, because her statements about and her feelings about yesterday's meeting are very clear, very clear. I don't want to butcher it, as I just read it yesterday when it came out, but denouncing the summit, essentially. She was not in favor of it, to put it that way, to put it lightly.
That's awesome. Anybody else? Well, I think that's everything.
All right. Send me that article.
Okay. And there was another one that I meant to send you on environmental. Yeah, and I'll send that to you as well. And I really appreciate you coming down and hearing us out. You at least, give our voice to her. Like, you are able to give a summary to her in terms of the things that we say. And that's very important, that the people are actually able to speak directly to her through you. And right on. And I think I saw you in the chorus at London Breed's inauguration. Was that you? Good job. You have a great voice.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Even better when it's surrounded by 30 others.
But it was awesome. Your voice stood out. I was looking for you, actually. You're welcome. See ya. All right, guys. As I've said before, we are witnessing the dismantling of our great nation. It's being torn apart, but I have hope, and I believe that this summit hopefully will be the final nail in this monster's coffin. And I do believe that we will finally start to see results. It's taken time. It's taken much longer than what I expected, but with Republicans in control of Congress and the Senate, it's kind of hard. But I have faith that the blue wave will come in, and I believe that it will push him out of the office, and hopefully, just hopefully, he doesn't nominate Kavanaugh. Hopefully Kavanaugh doesn't go through, and I believe that this particular summit may actually stop that nomination from going through. And I'm very hopeful, and I'm thankful for you guys, because if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be as involved as I am now. I used to be extremely involved in politics. I used to work with Barbara Lee. I worked on the Obama campaign in 2008. I worked with the Sierra Club, and then I ran into a wall a few years ago, and was a little bit burnt out. And I'm grateful, and I feel re-energized, and I'm going to carry us through this. And all of you guys have also helped carry me, and you all are very positive, awesome people, and I really appreciate it. So, you guys ready? Yeah. Power to the people. Power to the people. Power to the people. Power to the people, right on. Power to the people. Power to the people. Power to the people. Power to the people, right on. Power to the people. Power to the people. Power to the people. Power to the people. Right on.